In today's episode, we're going after what does it actually look like to build a life by design, to leave a lasting legacy by design, instead of settling for a life and legacy by default. We're going after that today with our guest, Brian Bowers, who's a good friend and mentor of mine. He also teaches at Ohio State University in their EMBA program, the executive MBA program there. And when I think about leadership and legacy, Brian is my go-to, and so I'm excited to introduce you to him, and we can learn together today from him so we could build a life and legacy by design. Brian Bowers, thank you so much for being on the podcast episode today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here with you. I'm excited about our topic of legacy.
Same. Yeah, usually we sit down at the Raymore Starbucks, and yet today here we are, so I'm excited to record a conversation with you, and today we're going after the topic of legacy. When I think of legacy, I shared at Bible study, actually, is how I met you. And John, he was asking me what I was up to, and I was telling him about my podcast. And as soon as he heard the word legacy, he's like, you have to meet Brian Bowers. And, a year and some change later, I'd say John was spot on with that. So let's get a running definition of what does legacy mean? Let's define that right out the gate.
Well, it's not a simple definition, but it's what do you want to be? What do you want to become? What impact do you want to have on the people that are most important to you, on your work, on your colleagues, on your community, on the town that you live in, the world that we live in? But I think most of all, it's discerning what God's purpose is for our life, and then putting a meaningful, intentional plan in place to achieve that.
That sounds pretty important.
I don't think there's anything more important. And yet, what I find fascinating and frustrating at the same time is, despite living in a world where we're surrounded by plans, you couldn't imagine going to work for an organization that didn't have a strategic plan that's linked to operating plans and financial plans and an endless list of other plans. And yet, the same people that will talk endlessly about the value of those plans, when you ask them, what's the plan for your life? The room goes silent. And they'll say, well, I don't really have a plan, but I have ideas. I have aspirations. I have goals. And I go, those are hobbies. That's not a plan. And so, unfortunately, most of us live our lives like a ship at sea that's lost power. And we drift aimlessly, being pushed around by the priorities, the goals, and the needs of everyone else in the world.
Right.
And then we wonder why we get to the end of our lives and we've reached a destination that we never planned nor wanted to go to.
Makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like legacy is a lot about being on the front end, the proactive side of thinking through your life versus reactive, responding to all the immediate needs. Say, like this morning going to the gym, I had a flat tire where the days could lead to years, and before I know it, I'm like, how did I end up here? You're talking about having a proactive approach when really designing our life.
Exactly. It's about taking control of that process and investing time and discerning what our values are, what our priorities are, what our goals are, what our purpose is, and incorporating that into a detailed plan with the help and input of the people that have important roles in all areas of our life.
This is that board of directors we've talked about.
Yes, having a personal board of directors is part of that plan.
So obviously this is an important topic to you. You've been at this for years now. Would you share a little bit of the background you have? Because you're on an airplane about every other day, it seems. And so this is a topic that's so important to you that you actually travel and you've shared this idea and these concepts. You've done some writing. You've created some things around this. Would you share a little bit about what you've been doing behind the scenes?
Well, the whole concept of legacy started for me about 30 years ago. Okay. And we had kind of one of those life moments. We had started a company down in Texas and acquired a couple of others, rolled it into a public offering, and after a couple of years after the IPO, I was bought out. And I came home with a big smile and a big check and sat down with my wife, Danny, and said, for the first time in our life, we can control where we go,
Wow.
what we do, how we do it. And I started in on a conversation about what business are we going to start now? And being disillusioned as I was at the time, I thought I knew the answer before I even asked that question, but I found nothing but silence on the other side of the table. And finally, Danny said, do you really want to know what I want? And of course I said yes. And she said, well, I don't want to start another business. I want you to go work for somebody else, spend their money, and come home at night to be more engaged with our marriage and with our family.
Wow.
And that's when the legacy, that was the catalyst that began my legacy journey. And after I took a moment to pause and think what had just occurred, we spent the next few weeks having some wonderful conversations about what were the priorities and the goals that we wanted for our marriage and for our family. And we wrote them down, and we laughed. We called them our own personal 10 Commandments, and they were the operating rules for our family. And it profoundly changed how I led, how we lived, and how we all interacted in wonderful ways. And I mistakenly thought my days of being an effective leader and a powerful leader were done. But I was more than happy to make that sacrifice because my marriage and our family was obviously the most important thing. And I said, well, business is just going to have to take a back seat.
Yeah.
Another major misconception about legacy is when I did re-engage, I took a job with a big corporation up in Wisconsin. And after negotiating the whole financial package and going through all the details, I sat down with the founder of the company and said, I've got one more thing. I've got these personal operating rules that are non-negotiable. And they were things like if our children had an event, and that might be a 3:30 baseball game or a teacher-parent conference, I had to be there. Unless there was some incredible, like a board meeting or something, scheduled opposite.
Yeah.
And he looked at it and kind of rubbed his chin and said, well, can you do the job and abide by these? And I go, we'll find out. And 5 years later, I not only found out that my assumption that having a balanced life and being an effective leader were incompatible. I had the best run of my entire career once I had become more balanced and also enabled my team to be more balanced. So it was an amazing start to the journey, and then I kind of hit my midlife crisis. I hit 50 a few years later, and I realized I'd never gone back to get a master's degree, which was something I always wanted to do. And so I said, well, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. Well, everybody around me, I was running close to a $1 billion company at the time, and they said, you're going to go back and get a master's degree. And I go, yes, I am. And while I was studying for the executive MBA program or degree at Ohio State, they had a class called Leadership Legacy, which all of a sudden my leadership or my legacy journey now had expanded to include work as well as family. And they did a wonderful job, and I just became more energized. But then people said, well, you're probably thinking, well, this is work-life balance. And it's not. Because when people talked about work-life balance, I said, why would you ever want to do something where one thing gets better only if the other thing gets worse? At the
expense of the other, yeah.
And so that I really was struggling with, how does that work? And then legacy blossomed, and I realized, wait a minute, there's more to it than work and family. There's our social network. There's our community. How do we give back? And then how do we manage ourselves? And it's not the model that I ultimately have developed is called work-life management. And it's not a trade-off. Like when you think of work-life balance, there's that trade-off. One goes
like a scale is what comes to mind. Yeah.
Work-life management is about harmony. And it's how do you create your priorities in all those areas and then find ways for them to create harmony across, I call them multi-domain wins, where doing, taking on activities or things where perhaps, let's say exercise, I know is something that's really important to you. If you exercise by yourself, that's one way to achieve that. But if you find ways to exercise with your family or with your colleagues at work or with your friends, all of a sudden you're creating great efficiencies by creating harmony across the domains in your world.
I see. That makes sense. Okay. So you came up with your then wife said, hold on, time out on the idea of going to build another business again. And you guys came up with rules of engagement for your household, like these 10 commandments. And it sounds like you guys established them as they were non-negotiable. And then you re-entered the workforce version 2.0 looking to build. But this time you slid the expectation across the table with the 10 commandments that you guys established. What happened next in order to build that legacy?
Well, there's one thing that in life that I call them crucible moments, and they're things that happen to us that we rarely have any control over, but have profound impacts on us. Well, right when this was all coming together, and I thought, life doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, kind of in a sweet spot, it sounds like.
My wife Danny and daughter Kate. Danny grew up in England, and they went to visit relatives over spring break. And my son Rob was a baseball player and played spring baseball, so he couldn't go. And so I said, well, why don't you girls go, and the boys will stay home, and Rob can play baseball, and all will be good. Yeah. On the flight back from London, Danny had a viral infection in her heart that she didn't know she had. And halfway across the Atlantic, her heart stopped. And so on a beautiful day just like today, I got a phone call out of nowhere from Northwest Airlines telling me there'd been a medical emergency on my wife's flight. And sadly, she did not survive. And what really set the power of legacy in my heart is at the lowest point in my life, I really came to realize what's important and what's not. And when I look back at the changes we had made and the investment we had made in our marriage and in our family and kind of in other areas of our life, they paid dividends in that moment that I can't begin to describe. And it really reconfirmed the power and the need for legacy planning and how it can obviously help you through the crucible moments, but also it just puts a framework and strength in your life that is difficult to describe.
Yeah. Wow. So when you say the things that are not so important versus the things that are important, what's some of those things that now looking back, it's like, okay, these are essential, mission critical, important versus not?
Well, I think David Brooks did a great job in his book Second Mountain describing it. When we begin our careers and our lives coming out of school, we often focus on accumulating achievements and wealth and status and all the rest, and only to discover at some point how futile that is. And as Brooks talks about, if you get to the top of the first mountain, if life doesn't knock you down that first mountain,
Yeah.
you look across the valley and you see a second mountain where joy and people reside, and you realize the real power of finding joy in your life. It's not happiness. It's not if you're pursuing the next car or the next job or the next
Yeah.
dollar. That's a journey that will end in a very bad place, and you'll never kind of achieve the really the joy that life's all about. And it's all about the people and the relationships and how those are enriched as you live. And that's the power of legacy. Is it's built around the relationships and the important people.
Okay.
Is legacy's not a journey that we take by ourselves. And it's as you build your individual plans in those different areas of your life, you need to have conversations with the important people that reside within those areas. And it not only it enriches and empowers it, but it also enriches and empowers each of those relationships, because the message, when you ask someone for their input on a legacy, that legacy isn't yours anymore. It's ours. And the message that you're conveying to all those people is really powerful, and often transforms some of those relationships and takes them to a whole nother level. But just as importantly, it ensures that as you move forward in your plan, you will bring those people with you. Wherever your legacy takes you, you'll be taking that journey together. And so at the end of your journey, you're all still together.
That's so good.
You've enjoyed a powerful time, life together.
So these different areas of your life that you're speaking of, does this lead us into the model that you've created?
Yes.
With the one in the middle, and then the others around it?
Yes, the 5 domains.
That's it.
Are basically the 2 we've talked about: our family, our work, our social network, our friends and acquaintances,
Okay.
and what I call the world or community, which is how do we give back? How do we engage with the community in powerful ways? But then sitting on top is probably the most challenging domain, and that's the self domain. And it's, as your good friend John Maxwell would like to say, it's managing the most challenging, difficult person you'll ever lead in your life, yourself.
So true. Right. Yeah.
It kind of serves as a foundation, obviously, for all the other domains, because you need to develop the right skills and knowledge and expertise that allows you to shine in all areas of your life.
Now, if there's one area, this is the model that I'll go ahead and put up on the screen. Would it be okay if I put this as a link with PDF if somebody wanted to download it and have a copy?
I would love that.
Okay, good deal. I'll do that. So I'll throw it up on the screen and include the PDF if someone's interested. Would you begin to walk us through and break down those models if you're interested?
I would definitely love to. In the self space, probably the most important attribute is developing self-awareness. I know it's an area that
We've talked a lot about this. I'm
passionate
working on it. Yep.
And there's a woman by the name of Tasha Eurich who's really dedicated her whole career to studying and actually doing research in the area of self-awareness in all of us. And it's a fascinating area, but it's probably, one could easily argue, it's the most important aspect of becoming a great leader. But it also impacts every area of our life.
Yeah.
And but it's something that we all need to spend time understanding at a new level and studying. And I would highly recommend researching some of her material to give you some insight as to what self-awareness is all about. She does a lot of surveys and research with business leaders around the world. And what she's found is when she asks leaders if they believe they are self-aware, about 85 or 90% say they are. But when she tests them, only about 15 to 20% actually are.
That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. And so I think it's one of those realities of legacy, kind of like the blind spot that I ran into that day that Danny and I were discussing our next adventure. Self-awareness is a blind spot for most of us, as Urich has discovered. And the only thing worse than someone who's not self-aware is someone who thinks they're self-aware and are not. We've all, I'm sure, had the joy of working for somebody or with someone that fell into that category.
Sure.
But what Urich explains about self-awareness that I totally agree with is there's two different types. There's in what she calls internal self-awareness, and that's kind of understanding how we tick. How do our emotions and all the how we deal with threats and other events that we confront in life, just understanding why do we do the things we do? Why do we say the things we do? Because so often it's an automatic process.
Right.
But it's something that the more knowledgeable we are and more aware we are of how that occurs, we can enhance how we do perform and become more effective in how we just manage life. But then the other side is called external self-awareness, and that's how do our actions and our words affect others. And that's really, I would say, you could argue that both sides require a real developing a passion for feedback, which I don't know about you, but I spent most of my career not having a passion for
Right. Yeah.
trying to avoid feedback.
Yeah,
at all.
resisting. Yeah.
I used to think annual reviews were like annual physicals.
Oh,
something
man.
you just tried to survive.
Yeah, make it through.
Minimal amount of
Right.
pain.
Yeah.
But it's developing a passion for feedback, not only by personally, but within your family, within your team at work. It's got to be a real priority, because once you accomplish that, the power of those units amplifies by a significant measure, because you'll just be so much more effective in how you interact and the kind of the general awareness of what's going on, the opportunities and the threats that surround us every day. Having that free and open conversation that doesn't occur when people are afraid of feedback, and it's a fascinating thing to watch. And when you see people that accomplish that, it's an amazing difference. And one other factor, kind of going back to work, something to be aware of is the further you ascend the ladder of success in organizations, the more likely you are to be unself-aware.
Wow.
And also the quality of the feedback and the amount of feedback that you get will deteriorate at an alarming rate, because it makes sense. No one wants to give the
I see what you're
boss
saying. Yeah.
bad feedback, and you can only imagine what that leads to.
Yeah.
Your crew of the Titanic is aware of the iceberg, but is afraid to tell the captain
Sure.
that we're heading.
So a question could be is, like, how am I creating a culture, whether it's in my household or in my workplace or in business? How am I creating a culture that feedback is the standard? We welcome feedback. We celebrate feedback. We make adjustments based off of feedback. So it sounds like being intentional to create a culture, an atmosphere where feedback is part of it, is going to be essential in this.
Oh, it's huge. And who do you think is the only person that can really lead that? And
that takes some courage, doesn't it? That's a vulnerable spot to be in.
And so I always I ask students how do they feel about feedback? And almost uniformly, they're,
Yeah.
we're not big fans of that. And I said, well, set something up that's easy and get your group together, whether it's your family or your team at work or wherever, and you have to set the standard and just say, start with things, simple questions like, of when you think of my leadership or my role, what do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of? What do I need to stop doing? And what do I need to start doing? And then be quiet, because it's human nature when if people have the courage to say, well, yeah, Chris, this I wish I really like when you do this. I wish you'd stop doing this. It's human nature to be defensive and say, well, wait a minute, you don't understand. And the second you do that, you shut down the whole. Then if they weren't comfortable with feedback, now they are petrified with feedback, and they're definitely not going to say anything.
Yeah.
So one of the most biggest challenges for a leader is, or anyone, when you're in that initial session where you're requesting feedback, you got to be engaged, you have to listen, and you need to express appreciation, no matter how bad or how good that feedback is, and really encourage them to provide honest feedback, whatever that may be. Because only, and sometimes it takes more than one session to get over that hurdle, but they go, I'm still
setting myself up here or what? Right.
But over time, your team will understand that you really do mean it, and you really do appreciate it. And so when the lens flips and you have to provide feedback, they're much more open to hearing your feedback and acting on it if they know this is an environment where everyone is safe to share feedback within the team.
That's good. That's some good advice right there. It's probably going to be a little bit of a process if we've gone from having a culture that doesn't make it a point to ask for feedback. If we're looking to make a change, it's probably going to take some time, I bet.
It's a huge first step, but it's amazing as it takes hold how it can change the dynamics on a team. And I've been fascinated with military officers, particularly special ops teams. At Ohio State, we often have officers that are rotating out of the military, and so I get a chance to really learn from them. And one of the things that they talk about is the dynamics within their team or squad. It's literally a matter of life and death that they have that open level of communication, and the power that brings them, obviously, to be aware of threats or opportunities, whatever that they're encountering real time. And so I've really come to realize that's something that we ought to try to apply in the workplace, and just think of the power that if your team would have that kind of, think of yourselves as like a SEAL team or a
high level of urgency and importance, and where everybody's life really depended on it.
So think of that. If you had that level of trust and awareness and communication within your team, within the workplace, how much more powerful and how much more responsive in a world that the pace at which and the complexity that we're facing requires that. So it's I think it's something that is in business we need to be very sensitive to, because I think there's real value to building those skills within your team.
So internal and external self-awareness. Anything else before we move on to the next part of the model?
There's a couple of others that I think are really important. One, and this is one that I missed for years, is what I call taking care of yourself. And having a long career in transportation and logistics, where if you had a 72-hour business day, you wouldn't have enough hours. oftentimes would make incredibly ignorant comments like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Sure.
And I wanted to be the first person in the office and the last person home. And I can't believe the damage I did to myself physically, not prioritizing rest and exercise and things. But even worse, the behavior that I was modeling for my team and the standards I was setting was totally unacceptable. And I read a book called Outlive by Peter Attia, who's a great physician and writer, and now he's got a whole new organization down in Austin, Texas, where he talks about health span. And he said we should all work on building a plan and awareness around our cognitive and physical health, that he says your goal shouldn't be just to see how long you can live so that you end up in the corner of an old folks home talking to yourself for the last 10 years. But he said, develop a plan that maximizes the quality of your life so that you go like to the very end and then fall off a cliff. And I was really profoundly impacted by that, and came to realize that our health is the fuel for our legacy. And if you might create the most powerful legacy plan on the planet, but it's worthless if you have a heart attack or you have a nervous breakdown and you can't function. So health is another important part of that self domain that
that's good.
We've got to incorporate in and again model across our team.
Yeah.
So it brings benefit to ourselves, but even more so as a part of our legacy, we're sharing that.
That's good.
With all the people
Got to
in our lives.
figure out how to take care of ourselves.
Yes, and then having a spiritual center. I've never met a great leader that didn't have a spiritual center, and it's again, it's seeking what God's purpose is for putting us on this earth.
Yeah.
And so having a spiritual center is so important to helping us stay between the white lines and leading through our core values and making, just having a filter that keeps us in the right space and making us aware of what our priorities should be, and when those storms come and those difficult events hit us, we're able to weather them. So I think having a spiritual center is huge. And the last point I'd want to touch base on is time. And it's amazing, no matter where I go, the geography, the demographics, the ethnicities, it doesn't make any difference. Nobody in the world has enough time these days.
Yeah.
And so a big part of legacy is understanding we have to recapture our calendar. And we can't just idly stand by as people take time away from us and waste a very valuable commodity. So there's a few tricks that I found have been really effective in helping achieve that. And one is, if you use an electronic calendar, whether it be on your phone or your computer, work or whatever, schedule everything. Anything that's important, put it in that calendar. Like if you're having coffee with a colleague, or lunch with your spouse, or your child's baseball game.
Yeah.
Put it, or working out. I'd hate to say how many times I would start the day saying, I'm going to work out over lunch, or after work I'm going to go to the club, I'm going to get and then something would preempt that, and off would go so everything, put it in your calendar.
That's good. I like to say, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Amen. And I found another trick was just scheduling blocks of time, just about every day, that were just blocks. there was nothing. I really wasn't doing anything. I'd call it like strategic planning, or
Okay.
come up with whatever title makes sense.
Yeah.
But it kept people away. They couldn't schedule me for a meeting.
I see.
Because I had that time blocked.
Okay.
And that provided time for access that I really needed.
Yeah.
And when someone actually needed to talk to me or engage with me, and it also allowed me to keep my sanity. So you don't have those days where you just go from meeting to meeting.
That's a great tip.
And
Yeah.
and not achieve what you wanted. It's kind of part of that legacy. It's if you don't protect your calendar, you end up living the priorities and the goals of everyone else
So true.
instead of what is important for you.
Yeah. So it's not even about what's in that time block that you have. That's just white space, or really just time to decompress, just to have it in there. It's not so much. It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not so much about what you do during that time. It's that it's important that you have that as space to just not be available,
Yes.
unless you change your mind, of course.
Because we all have priorities.
Right.
We all have things we want to get done today.
Yeah.
That oftentimes get preempted when somebody else takes that time, and all of a sudden you're sitting. How many
Right.
times have we all sat in meetings going, "Why are we all here?
Right.
And why am I here?"
This could have been an email. Yeah.
So another great topic to have with your group at work is to how do we spend our time? How do we structure our meetings? Too often, people will say we're meeting from 8 to 9 every Monday for a staff meeting. Well, when you might have 15 minutes worth of material, or you give somebody a half hour to talk about something, they'll spend a half hour talking about it, even though they only have 10 minutes worth of material.
Yeah.
So it's a great topic that can, again, kind of in that open dialogue of feedback within your team, talk about how do you spend your time, and how do we meet, or how do we not meet? How do we prepare for meetings that can perhaps shorten the amount of time that we have to spend in the meeting?
Okay.
So it's all just part of becoming more efficient and more respectful of
good.
one another.
What made you put the time component to consider in the spiritual side versus the self side? Just curious.
Well, time is just part of kind of managing ourself. And
Okay.
spiritual is obviously the center post of that.
I see.
But it's kind of I guess you could look at time management as honoring.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Okay. And however, with your model, you included that. Is that the self part?
Yes, that's part of
Okay,
it.
got it.
Those are all parts of
Yeah.
the
And I'll put that graphic up, so that'll be a good visual for people to see what we could see there. So, okay.
And it's when you first embrace the concept of legacy.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that people have is like drinking the ocean.
Yeah.
How do I start this?
Right.
There's so many, and that's what I love about the model is it gives you a process and a structure and some initial questions. Mm-hmm. So what I would recommend, if somebody wanted to start this process, look at the model by yourself, and in each of the domains, look forward, like assess where you are today, and then maybe 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years, where would you want to be within that domain that's different from today? And then what would need to happen to achieve that outcome that you would like?
It's almost like reverse engineering our lives.
Yes.
I think it's Darren Hardy. Somebody else probably said it besides him, beginning with the end in mind.
Yes.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And then go to kind of look in each domain and identify who are the people, like in your family, in your work environment, in your friends and acquaintances, in the community. Like what are the causes that you're passionate about and things? Who are the people that reside in those? And then probably start with your family and ask them to do the same thing. look at the same questions through the same time frames on their own, and then after they've had some time to determine what their answers are, then get together and compare notes.
That's good. So even like I have teenagers, would you propose that, of course, my wife and I do this and yet include them in that?
Oh, I think it, now there's obviously, there's questions
Sure.
for each
Right.
member of the family.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think this is, including legacy within all members of your family, pay enormous dividends.
Okay.
And in today's environment, one of the things that absolutely petrifies me is when I see Gen Z, who now outnumber baby boomers in the workforce for
Right.
the first time. They bring tremendous assets, but also tremendous liabilities into the working world. And one of the things that scares me is, on one hand, their knowledge of technology. They're the first pure digital generation.
Yeah, it's true.
They understand and they're comfortable with technology in ways that the rest of us struggle.
Right.
As you kind of migrate up, but
Sure.
particularly when you get up to my group. But unfortunately, that has also alienated them from just normal interpersonal communication. And so they rely more and more on social media for guidance and feedback. And so it's no wonder that we're encountering record levels of depression,
Oh, yeah.
anxiety, and what have you. So I think one of the beauties of a family plan, in a legacy plan, is to develop communication within the family that is healthy and can set a standard that can actually create tremendous competitive advantage for them within their own generation, because they will be able to communicate, they will be able to
Right.
interact at a level that their counterparts will really
Yeah, it'll
struggle.
stand out. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I think it's really important to develop those skills and that free flow of engagement and modeling of the behaviors. Think of legacy is about impacting the people around us with the values that are important to us, the priorities in life, the behavior, just you can kind of go down that list. So it's an opportunity to model and instill those in our children and within our family, but also to understand, give them a voice to share what's going through their head, and to make sure that we're all understanding each other, that
That's
with that
good.
free flow of
Yeah.
information. So I think that's a real powerful part of the family dynamic, and so including everybody is absolutely critical.
Yeah, that's good. I'll have to expand the conversation then. So that's in my household with this. That's I'm glad you bring that up, Brian. So your kids, you're in a different season where your kids are grown and you have grandkids. So do you still make it a point to include your kids in bits and pieces of legacy for you and your family? Does it just look different than prior years, or is it just kind of completely different now?
What's interesting is, as your children get married and start their own families,
Yeah.
you have to respect those boundaries. But what I love is when Kate and Robert share that some of the decisions we made back after those conversations that Danny had profound impacts on them. And now as they're out
Wow.
now and they've created
Sure.
their own families, they're replicating many of those
I see.
same behaviors in how they interact within their.
Yeah. That's good. That's a beautiful thing.
So we all kind of share that, but you also have to respect.
Right. The life that they're
boundaries.
building and the
Yes.
choices they make. Sure.
So,
Okay.
but that's a real important part of
Yeah.
legacy, is that family dynamic of of sharing your legacy with them so they understand it, and hopefully because part of legacy is not just creating our own, but encouraging all the people around us to create their own. And each of us is obviously a unique person.
Sure.
And so that legacy journey is going to be unique to each one of us. But part of that it will hopefully inspire them to start that process at a very young age.
Yeah.
Which is beyond exciting.
Definitely.
So when you think you can live your life focused on that intentional journey versus following the journey that's been dictated by others, the sooner that happens, the more powerful that journey is going to be. So if you can and start instilling that in your children, that's exciting.
So with your wife, do you guys get a way to have conversations around this to check in with each other? How have you made this a part of your life? Do you have routines that you evaluate things quarterly or yearly?
There's a structure as part of, for instance, one area that I totally missed for too long until I was the community part.
Okay.
And how do we give back? And I cringe when I think of how many times when people say, well, what is your kind of charitable world? How do you give back? My charitable world is writing checks. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to get involved in that.
Sure.
Again, I'm sure they appreciated the financial donations, but
Right.
I was missing out on an enormous area, an incredibly important area of joy and fulfillment in my life and in, again, the life of our family and those at work and all the rest. So what I realized there is that's something that takes planning and for us to really maximize the power of that part of our legacy, you have to think through it, and you can, or again, you randomly respond to other people asking you for donations to things that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
You aren't engaged with them. The chances are you're going to provide financial assistance to ineffective charities.
Yeah.
Because the world is not short of charitable
Right.
organizations. So the beauty of kind of, again, flipping that around is if as a family you have a giving strategy every year of who are we going to give our time, our talent, and our resources to as a way to give back. You can do that yourself. You can do that as a couple. But what a wonderful opportunity to share your legacy goals and priorities if you do that as a family. And even I've had friends that encourage their children to have they get to actually select a small area to donate to and are very actively involved.
Yeah. Wow.
And I always, it's an area that you can I always say you should never donate to an organization that you don't know and experience. So it's a great opportunity as a family, as a work team, as with friends to go out and engage in.
That's good.
So that's an example of kind of a structured planning process. So it's now an intentional giving strategy versus just randomly responding.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's always somebody calling with the next grade. And then one of my favorite words in legacy is no. So it's once you have a plan, for instance, for giving, and you get that random request from somebody who's very convincing and somebody that you might feel bad saying no to, just say, thank you, Chris, for approaching me, and I'd love to learn more about your organization. But our family has a giving plan that we negotiate on an annual basis. So we're tied up this year, but
Yeah.
let us know more about your organization, and
That's solid.
we can.
Wow.
So it allows you to live an intentional life in how you give and how you invest your time and resources.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, you're teaching your children through their involvement how to do that as they begin to create their legacies and mature into their own lives. So
That's real good.
so there's a lot of those opportunities throughout the work-life management model that
Yeah.
kind of help provide structure and engagement with the right people.
So it sounds like you're a fan, like a both and approach to giving financially and contributing with time. That you predetermine that you're going to give in both of those areas.
I think it's enormously important to do all that, and I'm glad I've, with some help of some very good friends, it was late in life that I figured that out, but I'm glad I did, because it makes such a difference. I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier, but I'm glad that I did when I got it, and hopefully I've helped influence my family and friends to do the same, because what a difference it makes. And
How long ago did you make the change to where you started contributing more of your time as opposed to just writing checks?
Well, it was a friend that I met in the master's program back in my 50s.
Okay.
A few years ago. And he had, while we were in class, Tim sold his company and walked away with I think $47 million clear. And he decided, I'm going to take the vast majority of that and put it into a foundation to help the poor. And he said, I had this noble journey ahead of me, and he was going to solve the poverty situation in the state of Ohio. And he's a very open and candid friend, and shared all the learnings that he gained going through that. And through that kind of helped open my eyes to how to do it and how not to do it. And it was really during probably the last 20 years that each year I got more and more educated as to how to do it. And so now I love to donate my time as much as my money. And, and it's such a rewarding path to walk.
Wow.
But it took a while to kind of figure it out, but through his adventures and some of the mistakes he made and some of the success he found, that I learned to do that as well. But
I see. Well, that's pretty neat. So the next domain, work, is that right?
Work.
We still got some more to do in the.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Work obviously is a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
And, one of the things it's another area that I think is worthy of studying. Is too often everybody knows about leadership, but how much do we know about leadership? Or there might be, I love how companies will say, well, we have leadership training. Like once a year for an hour or two, you're going to go sit in a room and have somebody teach you leadership. And they think, okay, everybody understands leadership. So it's something that we have to own, and it's a journey that we have to take to dig into it and to understand what great leadership is and what it's not, and study the leaders that we encounter that reflect the kind of the legacy values and priorities that we have. And when we see that, I'm always on a lookout for leaders that represent those attributes and virtues, and then approach them and oftentimes just say, you do an amazing job in how did you learn to do that? And engage with them, and then in some cases they become mentors or friends.
Wow.
And it's amazing how, as you get on that treadmill of trying to understand what leadership's all about. Ideally, you'll find some model, and if you go out on the internet and look, or just start looking at literature on leadership, your head's going to explode, because there's 1,000 different ideas, models, and theories. But find one that resonates with you. And for me, that was Bill George's Authentic Leadership, book that's now probably 20 years old, but still, to me, is as fresh as the day he wrote it. And he really structured what leadership should be in a way that I have incorporated into my legacy and how I've tried to lead. And a big part of that is being a servant leader, where I came to realize that my success was a reflection of the success of my team. And I found that I really couldn't deal with leaders that usually started with a conversation with, "You work for me."
There's your sign, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think just again, it's just like self-awareness. Anytime you spend studying leadership and engaging with leaders that reflect the skills and the attributes that you admire in leaders and hope to acquire for yourself, it kind of all feeds into your leadership journey.
That's good. So who are some of the people from, it could be current times or maybe even history, because I know you're a history guy. Who are some of the great leaders that you've made it a point to study and learn from?
In modern day, John Maxwell is an incredible resource. I found his work he gets it in a way that is easy to read and apply. And historic, as you mentioned, I'm a history geek, so one of the things I love about history is just learning when you think of people, whether it was Winston Churchill or Dwight Eisenhower or Abraham Lincoln or Martin Luther King, that went through incredibly stressful situations. I'm really inspired by how they led and sometimes learn little things, sometimes big things about leadership through how they dealt with crucible moments with a capital C.
Yeah.
And so it's just all kind of getting on that learning treadmill, just being a lifetime learner of leadership and other areas is an essential part of legacy, because there's no end.
Right.
How much knowledge and expertise is out there that is
good.
waiting for us to discover.
So a big part of that work domain is going to be leadership.
Yes.
Any other aspects of that one?
A couple. I always trust, and trust is really something that permeates everything in legacy. But in the workplace, it was something that another one of those topics I missed for too long, and I made the mistake of thinking someone could be allowed to disrupt the trust of my work team if their skills were valuable enough in another area. An example would be someone like, she is an incredible salesperson. She brings in so much business. She disrupts, she's rude, she disrupts our group, but we can't afford to lose her ability to bring business in the door. That was one of the dumbest assumptions or mistakes I ever made. And it took me a while to figure out trust was something, and Stephen Covey's books are wonderful and kind of really showing that and explaining the value of trust in all areas of our life. But I became a true believer that trust is something that, as a leader, you have to exemplify, and you have to understand what elevates trust and what erodes trust, and make sure that your behavior is properly aligned. But then within your scope of influence, you can't allow somebody to disrupt the trust within your group. So trust is another big part of effectiveness in the workplace. intentional networking is something that I'm laughing because when I think of Gen Z, probably something that makes them break out in hives is intentional networking. But it's absolutely mission critical in the business world and in a lot of other areas of our lives to identify who are the people, when you think of it from your legacy, what are the people whose influence, knowledge, expertise would bring great value to our legacy walk, and seek those people out. It's understanding that your company org chart, and people maybe within your industry or your community or whatever that have those skills that would really benefit you, your team, but all would kind of feed your legacy. And make a point of intentionally seeking out connection. And so if you're going to a organizational meeting or you're going to a conference, too often I over the years I saw people would go to a conference and sit with the people from their company the whole time that they were there. I always said, I want a hit list of people who's going to be at this conference. Who do I want to find? So I have to be very intentional about how you reach out and try to connect with people that can bring benefit to you and your legacy journey. That's intentional networking is one. And then the last point I'd say on work is executive presence. I'd hate to say how many times I sat in management meetings where we were talking about people that weren't there in relation to opportunities within the organization. And I'd hate to say how many times people's careers were submarined in meetings that they weren't even in. So executive presence is how do you perform in a number of really important areas that position you for the roles that you wish to attain in your legacy walk. And so it's something is building communication skills, building maturity, and just interpersonal skills that are often really mission critical. So I would say if you're going to not attain a certain goal or position, or whatever, make it for something other than executive presence or appearance or something like that's related. So
it's a good tip.
So executive presence is another topic to do a little research on, and it will pay some pretty significant dividends.
Good to know. Boy, you've put a lot of thought into these.
Oh, and what you'll find, Chris, is as you embrace legacy, it's like history. There's no end to how many layers there are, or how far you can dig or explore, because there's always new ways to apply and enhance your walk. And that's what's I love about the interaction that as you have kind of an open conversation, whether it be at work or family or friends, whatever. There's always something, if you're open to it, and you're listening, the power of those conversations and that tapping into that collective network is pretty powerful.
That's good. What's the next piece?
Well, one, and this kind of transcends all areas of the model, and it's becoming an effective listener. And something I learned a long time ago from, of all people, Nelson Mandela, that I saw in a conference, talked about his father, who was a tribal chief in South Africa when he was a little boy. And he would travel around with his dad to meet with different groups, and he was always the last to speak. And he asked his father, well, you're the most important person there. Why aren't you the first to speak? And that's when he learned the lesson of listening like a chief. He said, if I speak first, how many people will never share or share what they believe? So learning to listen, this is a little habit that I love to share with my students, and I can't tell you how many times people have come back and said, you know what, I think as Americans, we always want to be the first to share our ideas.
Yeah.
And in whether it be in the family or at work or with friends or whatever, oftentimes in these days where we seem to just be combative in how we interact, you can shut down a conversation before it begins. But particularly if you're the leader and you can sit back and allow everyone else to share their feelings and their positions, one, you can often escape from some embarrassing situations that if you speak first and without having the benefit of understanding the collective expertise, there may be a point that you're ignorant of that you might have changed your opinion or your comments had you known about it. So you benefit from hearing everyone else's opinion, but you also build, it goes back to trust. They all know you can speak anytime you want.
Yeah.
But when you allow them to all speak their mind, you're showing them respect and building trust with the people around you. But listening, just becoming an active listener, it's a challenge for all of us. But it's a skill, again, to try to research and try to learn, because the benefits that it will bring you in all areas of your life are profound.
That's good. It reminds me back to that self-awareness piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are part and parcel.
Yeah.
So they feed one another, but it's something that we all can improve how we listen.
Yeah.
But it just takes time to develop those skills and understand them and apply them.
That's good.
Any progress you make pays dividends.
There's been some times in particular in sales, if I'm working with somebody that's new to the sales industry, where their concern is that they don't they're maybe not as outgoing as others. They don't open up and share compared to others that may do that more frequently or more easily, it seems. And I tell them, it's like, if it doesn't come naturally for you to just talk all the time, that's actually a gift. It's more valuable to listen than to just talk all the time. So I always encourage people that may be intimidated because they may feel like they don't have a lot to say. It's actually more powerful to be a listener. John Maxwell, his book, because this is something I've really had to work on, because I enjoy talking. And so his book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, I found real helpful on learning some active listening skills. And because the whole goal of communication is connection. And to connect with somebody, oftentimes it requires me talking less than I think I should. And a big part of that is what you're talking about, being an active listener.
Oh, that is painfully true.
Yeah.
But so often it's almost an American pastime to not be good listeners.
There's so many times, every Wednesday morning I get to practice this, because whether it's an opportunity to jump up and pray or to ask a question or something like that, on Wednesdays I'm okay. I'm just going to listen and just take it in, be an active listener, and suppress that need to share or say something. So I've been working on that one. The struggle is real.
Well, and that's the whole concept of active listening. Kind of, once you can start to perfect that ability, and then if you're, as Covey would say, if you're listening with the purpose of responding, you're not listening, and you're missing cues, missing maybe body language or other things that someone may be screaming at you without screaming.
Yeah.
That with a certain message that you're just oblivious to, because you're loading your weapon ready to respond, and it really is frustrating these days when too often you got two or more people sitting having a heated conversation.
Yeah.
No one is listening to anyone.
Right.
And so it's something that I think as leaders or as parents or whatever, we need to try to change that dynamic any way we can and try to demonstrate, no, we can have different opinions, but we need to listen to one another. And that's how we learn. When we talk at each other, we don't learn
that's a good point.
But when we actually listen, even to people who have opinions that are very different than ours,
Yeah.
at least you can learn, why do they feel that way?
Yeah.
Which you never will if you're shouting at one another.
Sure. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that just because we seek to understand their perspective or just their perspective, that doesn't mean that I have to agree with them just because I listen. So I can appreciate what you're saying on that one.
Well, it doesn't always work, but occasionally it does. And when it does, it's profound. I had a boss that taught me, if you're going into a conversation where we don't see whatever topic we're about to discuss through the same lens. He said, normally people are getting ready for battle and they're just convinced that this is going to be a real aggressive exchange. So he said, try just like, Chris, I know we don't understand, I don't see this topic through the same lens, but I would love to understand, why do you feel the way you feel? And if you could share that, I'd really appreciate it. Sometimes they don't want to know that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it really disarms.
That's a good word for it.
The whole exchange. And sometimes people don't really know why. But worst case is you'll understand why that other person felt the way or feels the way they do. Mm-hmm. And it can help you perhaps have a different conversation. And I found there are times when approaching it that way, the other party would actually listen to what I had to say. May not agree with it.
Yeah.
They would listen, and you walked away with a different dynamic than you certainly began, where it was like two goats clashing.
It's a great tip.
So lots of things to learn.
Yeah. You know what's standing out today, Brian, because you and I have talked through these many different times over many cups of coffee, and I'm reminded of how much it's about the lives of others, the impact. Even like you emphasize servant leadership, that the idea that it's not about myself, it's about those on my team. So I think in today's conversation, what's standing out is how much it includes others and impacts others. Then also, I feel like being married, having a wife gives me a huge opportunity. Number one, I have, not only am I married, I have children. So it's like, there's a temptation to take some of this and apply it to business, which absolutely do that. However, apply it here at home first. When I think about getting feedback, I mean, even it was just this morning, my wife, it was right over there. My wife pulled me in. It's like, hey, she just made me aware of my I guess my attitude, how I was, my tone, that's what it was. And I didn't even think anything of it. But when she pulled me to the side gently and said, hey, it kind of gave me some coaching. I'm like, oh, it just helped me be more aware. So I'm thinking about, man, what a blessing it is that my wife helps me so much become more aware, offer feedback, and how much expanding these conversations over time with her, how much it's helped me in business to have a sense of direction, and even in setting some goals. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking about right now. Yeah, thank you for freely sharing this, Brian. Appreciate you.
Oh,
it's good stuff.
It's what life's all about.
Yeah, if I'll slow down and pay attention, right? Yeah.
But it's something you just constantly have to be accustomed to, and it brings up an interesting point that my special forces friends help me, and that's transitions. One of the challenges we have as we shift, you can almost look at it from the domain structure, But it can also happen within work. Let's say, for instance, if you're going to work and someone pulls in front of you as you're pulling into the parking lot, and as you walk in the door of the office, you're still absolutely irate at
Oh boy. Yeah.
the individual that cut you off and just about demolished your car. And so it has nothing to do with what's going on in the work environment, but
Yeah.
your demeanor, your attitude, if someone approaches you, you're mad. And all of a sudden, they're reading your behavior, your body language, and everything from a work environment, which is totally wrong, but that's just reality. And so as we transition, and the same thing can happen when we go from work to home. If we're still engaged with a conversation we had, or we're talking on the phone, and we're not engaged with what's going on in our family, we can send really negative messages that we don't even realize we're sending. So what they recommend is every time you're transitioning from work to home, home to work, before you do, stop, pause, kind of clear your head, smile, and then move into the next environment. And until you can kind of divest your brain of a conversation or what have you, don't transition until you can. But just being aware that I'm leaving one environment and going to another, or if you're at work and you're going from one meeting to another, take a moment.
That's good.
And stop. So you're going in with your clear. So one, your senses are available to you to understand the environment that you're walking
Yeah.
into, but also that you're not sending a message that you don't want to send,
Yeah.
simply because you're still living in some event or an exchange or whatever that you brought into this new
That
environment.
makes a lot of sense. So be aware of transition periods throughout
Yes.
the day.
And with technology, that can be our worst enemy,
Yeah.
causing us to not be present with the people that we're with,
Sure.
because we're wandering off.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember 2020, I was having so many Zoom meetings, and it was the first time where it's like I could be in this group and instantly be done and hop into this other group with these people all the way over here in a different area, and all back to back. And I just know that there was some. It worked until it didn't, where I didn't have that time. Come to find out, having drive time even in between appointments could be a better transition than hanging up a Zoom and jumping on another one. So I could appreciate, that's one area that I could use some make it a point to keep getting better at, is those transitions.
And
It's a good one.
And related is just being aware
Yeah.
of the power of our words and the power of our actions, the things we say, the things we don't say, the things we do, the things we don't do.
Yeah.
If you walk in the house and you ignore, it may be your spouse or your children have some event that they are beyond excited to share,
Right.
or maybe something has happened that they're really down and they would love just a word of encouragement or a hug or whatever, and you're oblivious. It's we model behavior. We are actors on a stage, and just being mindful of that, and the power to use that for good, and the power for negative outcomes when we're not sensitive to that,
Yeah.
is something I always laugh at a company I worked at up in Wisconsin. Our president was preoccupied going from one meeting to the next, ran into the wrong conference room.
Oh.
And to his credit, instead of just saying, I am a moron, I've come to the wrong place, he said, I just shifted it. I said, I need to be down the hall, but I saw you all meeting in here, and I wanted you to know how much I appreciate what you do and how important the work you do is. And I just wanted to say that, so sorry for interrupting, but I got to go.
Well played. Yeah.
Half the people in that room came to me before the end of the day and said, our president came in and told us how much they appreciate it. I mean, they were just on cloud nine. But I've always thought of that as a great example.
That's so good.
Of a very insignificant act having a profound impact. And that's whether it's as a parent or a spouse or a boss or a friend. We have those opportunities every day, but unfortunately too rarely do we take advantage.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So just another tool in the toolbox.
That's fun. Yeah, that's a good one.
But one area that we haven't touched on is friends and acquaintances. And so often I hear people of all ages say, I love my friends. Mm-hmm. But right now, due to whatever time of life we're at, I'm just too busy and I don't have time for them. But they understand. They don't. And I got some friends in England that actually wrote a book about what is the impact on friendships and other relationships when we disengage or we don't kind of nourish those relationships. And it's amazing how they fall off. Different types of relationships fall off at different speeds. But friends are an enormous source of enrichment and joy in our lives. But there's something that we have to invest in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have more time than others, but it's to take extra time to just reach out to friends and engage. It adds a lot of richness to our legacy, and it's another area where I think it's important to understand who those friends are, what roles they play. And there's a great book called Vital Friends that I read that really kind of goes into the roles that all our friends play. And the more you understand that, the richer your relationships can become, because oftentimes, if someone's a good friend, we expect them to play every role that we need a friend to play. Mm-hmm. And as Ross said, sometimes it's like asking a plumber to do open heart surgery or have a cardiac surgeon fix the plumbing in your house, not knowing the roles that our friends really fill in our life. Often we get disappointed when in fact we're at fault because we're expecting or asking them to do something they're totally incapable of doing. So the friends and acquaintance area is another area that requires a plan and requires a dedicated effort to build those relationships, invest in those relationships, and then identifying, are there some people that we need to elevate, or as he calls them, very important, very influential friends or very dependent friends.
Big difference.
That can have a big impact on our legacy. And
so if there's somebody out there, they download the PDF, they're looking at this and think, you know what, I want to start being more intentional about creating a life by design and building a legacy. Where would is there a starting point? What would be your recommendation on helping them to take a next step to be this intentional? Because there's a lot of different components.
I would just focus on the model and start building your plans and having those conversations. And it's I think people haven't sometimes in today's world of like immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Often people say, well, give me the 10 questions.
Right.
And they want to be able to answer 10 questions, plug them into a program, and boom, a legacy plan comes out. It's having patience.
Yeah.
And a dedication to moving this forward. And it takes some time, but just continue to have those conversations, continue to ask the questions, continue to reach out to people that can provide feedback and input to your journey, and it'll come together. And it's fascinating to see how, as it starts to come together, it's a tangible change as you're kind of shifting from a trajectory where other people are dictating your life.
Yeah.
To all of a sudden you realize I'm controlling this, and I'm benefiting because I made the decision to make these investments in my journey or my family's journey. That it will come to you, and you'll have those, I call them legacy moments, where like, I get it. So it just patience, but focus on the plan, focus on those conversations, and continually reach out to people that can help you in your journey.
That's good.
And that's where that you mentioned earlier, having a personal board of directors.
Yeah.
People that can help you, can help hold you accountable, are invaluable. So always be on the lookout for people in all areas of your life that can bring value to your journey.
That's a good tip. Well, Brian, I know we could turn this into a series easily. I appreciate you being on the show today, and I thank you so much for sharing with us, man. It's been a rich conversation.
Oh, it's something obviously that is a kind of a sacred topic for me, and anything I can do to help anyone find their legacy, is time well spent. So
That's good.
Really enjoyed the opportunity.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.